Parents, what is the worst most awkward thing your kid has seen or overheard because you didn't realize they were in the room? NSFW. After my now ex bought his new house, he and I got into the habit of fooling around on the couch in the basement rec room after his 2 young kids went to sleep. We weren't loud, but we weren't exactly quiet. Seems reckless, but the kids were on the 2nd floor and we had a smart house, so we would have known if the doors to either of their rooms opened, and the basement rec room was further away from their rooms than our bedroom. It seemed like the best way for us to get our jollies on during the nights when we had the kids. About 6 months after we've moved into this house, I was doing some chores while my boyfriend and his brother were in the basement on the couch just chatting. I went into his son's room to put away some laundry, and to my absolute horror I could hear every single word they were saying in the basement, amplified and clear as a bell, as if they were standing directly next to me. I could hear it when his brother took a sip of his coffee. Turns out the vent above the basement couch went straight to his son's bedroom, and the vent was right next to his bed. I never really wanted kids and just happened to fall in love with a man who had them, so nothing prepared me for having to explain to my partner that his 7-year-old son had likely been laying awake at night being repeatedly traumatized by the sounds of me sloppily sucking his dad's D. Not a parent but son. I once overheard my mother telling my father that if they were to adopt instead of giving birth, they would have chosen a better son than me. I don't think she meant it, but it sure did hurt. My ex-wife was having an affair. I did not know, and took my 3 sons to beach one day. There just happened to be a guy there from her work. At one point one of my sons was standing off to the side and overheard my ex-wife say to her co-worker, "If you're gonna stare at my ass, don't be doing it in front of the kids." My son came home and told me, she is now my ex. When my husband and I started dating, he was renting a room in a basement from some friends. The friends had kids around the same age, 6 at the time, as his daughter, and they played well together. It was a summer day, so the kids went outside to play and we started fooling around. I had a dress on and ended up on top of him on the couch. A few days later, he gets an angry call from baby mama. Apparently, his daughter snuck back into the basement and sat at the top of the steps where it was dark and watched us. She pinned another kid down at daycare trying to reenact what she saw. Definitely one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. Son here was 18 at the time. Girlfriend's parents have weird attitudes. They kicked her out and she moved in with us. We lived in the basement and as such we had traffic from my family doing laundry. Girlfriend and I got into a little back and forth. Not really sure on the subject or the beginning, but I remember her closing comment was something like, "But you don't mind when your balls slap my pussy." At the time of this comment I could see my dad's legs starting to come down the stairs, stop, and go backwards. I told her what had just happened and she 100% pissed herself on the spot. Me and her still laugh about this. I was on holiday in a caravan in France. The kids, boys, 6 and 4, were asleep. I had had a few glasses of wine and started fooling around with the MRS in our bedroom. She was sucking my D and she likes me giving her some dirty talk. So I said a few things while she was down there, then we finished up and go to sleep. Next day at the swimming pool my 6-year-old gets his 4-year-old brother an ice cream. He starts saying, "Yeah, you like that? Go on, rub it all over your face. You're filthy. You love it," while my 4-year-old is just munching his ice cream, dribbling it everywhere and saying, "Yes, I do love ice cream." My wife found it hilarious but I found it kinda disturbing. We didn't fool around again until we went home. It felt like the walls had ears. Kid used to hang out at my girlfriend's parents' house almost every day after school. We could always hear her parents banging. To this day, I still don't know if they just didn't know that we could hear or didn't care. Plot twist, whenever we heard them start going at it, we did too, because we knew they were occupied and it was safe. Wife asked me if I was almost done showering. My response was, "Why? Are you going to suck it?" I was just being funny, not knowing my son was right next to her. I overheard my mother tell someone my brother was my half-brother. The fact that he was olive-skinned with poker straight hair and I was lolly white with ginger hair never even triggered a second thought. My daughter hid at the foot of the bed while me and my ex-wife were discussing my recent at the time suicide attempt and my depression. We don't know how long she was there. She claimed only a second and I hope she didn't hear details. They see a counselor to deal with the divorce and it's never come up. I'm the daughter, only child, which probably has a bit to do with these situations. And the fact that our house was pretty small. But I have a couple. Walked in on my dad showing mom how bad his hemorrhoids have gotten. I got yelled at for this one. Was sitting watching TV when dad, with a beer in his hand, walked to the bottom of the stairs, called up to mom giggling because he had discovered a hole in his briefs and a ball was sticking through. I'm still 90% sure he never noticed I was there still. My dad's not a drunk or anything, but damn is he unobservant sometimes. I'm not a parent but my friend has 3 kids. He ate something one time and spit it right back out saying that tasted like old man ballsack. His son was right behind him and now it's his new catchphrase. When my son was around 18 months old, he was napping, so feeling frisky we decided perfect time to get it on. So my sir was bent over the bed and I was behind her about to finish and my son sneaks in and starts slapping my bare ass. My sir was moaning why I had stopped and then realized why. Very funny, but would not recommend. Edit. Thanks for the gold, kind stranger. Not a parent but a kid. When I was around 15, my dad was deployed and it was pretty hard on my mom. Me and her didn't really get along and one night she grounded me for a month for not brushing my teeth. I told her that was ridiculous and how pissed I was that I was going to miss a lot of social events. Then locked myself in my room and just sat there. She Skyped my dad later that night and I overheard her saying when I turned 18, she was kicking me out and never wanted to see me again. Also, that she wished I was more like my little brother. I didn't talk to her for a week and she never understood why. I ended up not moving out till I was 20 due to college. But we still don't really have a good relationship and it created this resentment of my brother for a couple of years that I never should have had. We're just now finally able to talk to each other without pissing the other one off. Edit. Yes. I meant should've. IDK where should've came from. I walked in on my dad watching a woman getting ducked by a horse. My 16-year-old son went out with his buddies and wasn't supposed to be home until 11. My then girlfriend, now wife, came over to go out to dinner and returned home for 6 time. Now when the house is empty we tend to be very vocal with dirty talk, and my wife likes to be submissive on occasion. So imagine the dirty talk and the spanking that went with it. We finish up, walk downstairs, and my son was home. He returned home shortly after we started and was watching TV downstairs, around 9 PM. He heard the entire thing and both my girlfriend, now wife, and I had to take the walk of shame to her car. Worse, when I walked back into the house, my son was laughing and saying he was grossed out because who wants to hear their parent having sex, especially of the kinky variety? I told him he wasn't supposed to be home and he should have called if he was coming home early. I told him the next time he came home early without calling first, we'd be sure to gross him out even more. What else could I say? My wife was less cringy about it than I was, but after that, my son always made sure to call and say he was on his way home. I have good friends. I am a godparent to their children, whose 3-year-old daughter walked in on them in a 69. Well, not really walked in. More like they were going to town on each other, and in such a position that they really couldn't see much. And he came up for a breath to notice that their daughter was standing in the doorway watching. No idea how long she had been there watching, which led to him trying to get his wife's attention by saying her name, but not really her name for the story's sake. Jen. Which didn't really get her attention because she just kept going. I guess it was pretty awkward getting his wife to stop, and then the conversations over the next few days. Anyway, it led to a very open and honest relationship between he and his wife and their daughter, and she has grown into a very successful 25-year-old. Her priority has always been education first, and she graduated from a top 3 engineering school in the US with a degree in biomedical engineering. Married the college boyfriend from sophomore year just last year, and no one could be happier. Everyone turned out fine. Extremely successful, well-rounded young woman. Her parents are swingers now. Everybody's happy. I keep subtly trying to tell my parents that sound travels really well in our house, and that I can hear everything that happens in my parents' room while I'm in my room. When I was a kid I heard mom crying in her bedroom. I opened the door to see what was wrong. Well, let's say mom wasn't crying. Lights were on, no covers, dad plowing the field. Bath. Hard to shake that one off, haha. I heard my mom joking about adopting me. I thought she was talking literally. I cried. Not a parent but kid. Overheard my mom crying over the phone to aunt, her sis, about a miscarriage that occurred before I was born. Asked my brother, 12 years older, about it, and I was supposed to have an older sister. Not a parent but a son. Once I heard my mom telling my neighbor, F, that they were actually going to abort me, but the doctor suggested them not to, since he had lost his 2 kids during pregnancy, miscarriage. And here I am today, alive and happy. As a kid I overheard many things. My parents work in a funeral related field that involves going to the scene of sudden traumatic deaths along with volunteering with the fire dept. I overheard how one of my friends splattered himself over 3 rooms with a shotgun. How one of my friends had to hold down to stop from fighting the paramedics after being in a crash. How light yet heavy children are in body bags. So much a teenager shouldn't have to hear, but it's formed me into this caffeine nicotine fueled adrenaline junkie, and I'm okay with that. Literally last night, my wife and I were watching The Good Place. Janet said happiness pump and I looked at my wife and said ha, D pump, Q 5-year-old, boy, penis pump. My mother once told a friend that my dad pranked her by going at it hard. Then he pulled out for a second and stuck a ice cold carrot in there. Yeah, I heard everything. TMI. My son found our handcuffs. He told him they were in case we had to catch a bad guy. He then proceeded to excitedly tell his grandmother about it at a family gathering. Not a parent, but a kid, who heard mom telling dad that because of my diabetes and lack of self-care will lead me to being always lonely and probably an amputee. Now this is painful. But right after she acted like nothing has been said and refused to remember this it. Funny enough, I have a girlfriend with whom I recently celebrated 4th anniversary and moved out with only 1 case of hypoglycemia coma. My sister was snoozing on the couch when my parents walked in and started talking without realizing she was there. Apparently, dad's birthday was coming up and mom brought up the topic of a birthday BJ, at which point my sister was no longer asleep. She was profoundly grossed out by being privy to that conversation. Daughter, my mom is pretty open about what's going on with her cycle. We all always knew when she was menstruating. We're mostly female in our house. No one really cared. So one of these times we're piled on the van returning from some trip and we're all off in our own little words when one sentence from my parents' conversation comes though. Dad, tonight, I'll be Moses. Sister and I scream in horrors. Dad admits that we weren't supposed to hear that. My mother was never shy. She'd tell me to my face what was on her mind. Always told me that my father was a piece of it and how much he hated him. But would turn around and in the same breath tell me I look just like him. Being a young teen, it made you think that when your mom looked at your face she didn't see you but your father. Now I have a 6-year-old and he is just as big of a redhead as me. Lol. He's my dude. I now know what kind of parent I want to be. My mom was talking on the phone one day and I was sitting next to her. She was talking about her sister, and she was being overly friendly. I literally had no idea who it could have been at first. My stepdad was downstairs, and it obviously wasn't my aunt on the other side, and she didn't have any friends she would talk like that to. So when she hung up I asked who it was, and she told me a friend. So I asked her boyfriend. Turns out she was cheating on my stepdad. A few days later I was getting a snack from the pantry and I heard my mom tell my aunt that she can't wait to move out and leave my stepdad. She thought I was outside. Hands down the worst way to learn that your family is splitting up. I found 2 dildos and a cock ring in my dad's bedroom. As a kid, we had a big family meal and my mom told my brother and I to help clean up afterwards. Logical. My mom left and went to the toilet. My dad went into the kitchen. My brother started stacking up some plates and I hid under the table because I wanted to scare either my mom or dad when they came back. My mom was the first to return, and when she saw I had left she told my brother, "Did your brother really just leave instead of cleaning?" It's stuff like that why I don't like him. I was like 6 and I had no idea how to respond to that. Thanks mom. Me. Mid-orgasm. On top of her dad when I was about 35 weeks pregnant. She started crying because she thought he was hurting me. She was 4. I walked into the garage and heard my dad tell my little brother that I was worse, that terrible at Little League. It crushed me as a 30-year-old man. Every once in a while, the wife and I will shower together. It's a good way to get a break from the kiddos and have some alone time together. 2 weeks ago, daughter, 4 years old, was napping and we snuck into the shower together. We're making some noise now and things are already set in motion that I can't take back. In the heat of the moment we hear, "Can I come in too?" Family shower. We pop our heads out of each side of the shower curtain and see our daughter just standing there naked, totally ready to jump in, with the most innocent smile and excitement on her face. She somehow snuck in without us hearing. I hope she wasn't standing there for long. I witnessed one of my mom's suicide attempts. Sucked. One time when I was young and got sick I slept in my parents' room. They made me a little bed right next to theirs on the floor and we slept. I woke up in the middle of the night and hear my mother and father whispering back and forth. My mom is going, "Stop. Stop. He's right there." To which my dad says, "Oh, he's fast asleep." Then I just start to hear soft moans until they finish. So yup, I had to listen to my parents have a sex and pretend I wasn't awake. Whoa, there are a lot of people in this thread who were or are children. Crazy. Not a parent, but I walked into my mom on top of my dad having sex. They told me that they were hugging in a special way. I use the special hug a lot nowadays. Not the parent but the aunt. When I was in a car accident last year my brother put his phone on speaker and my niece and nephew heard that I had been hurt and was taken to the hospital. He had to explain a lot to them that most children should not have to know. Bless them, they thought I got cut up and taken out the car and put back together in the hospital. Not coming from a parent, but I recently overheard my parents are getting a divorce. Also a son. My brother and I went to a drive-in movie with my mom and one of her friends. We were pretty young. I think the first one was some kids movie and she thought we would be asleep by the third. We were awake the entire time. The third movie was Scary Movie 1, and the scene where the dude puts the D in the guy's ear through the glory hole came on. I asked what that was and she said it was a thumb. Woman, I was testing you. I knew exactly what was going on, LMAO. As a kid, I never heard or walked in on my parents having sex. The walls were super thin, and I would have heard anything. So I could always blissfully imagine that they just never did it after having me. I was home from college over spring break, and it happened. My girlfriend, now wife, and I got home from a date, and I could hear my parents' TV on. So I went to just say that we were home. I even knocked. The next morning, my mom got me up for church and just quietly said, "Please knock from now on." I was like, I did. Now, our 4-year-old hardly ever gets up in the middle of the night, so my wife and I don't think too much about locking the door at night. But it happened the other night. I thought I heard something, but then thought it was the TV. Then I look over and see her standing in the doorway. She was rubbing her eyes, and I think we were able to get under the covers fast enough, because she didn't even question anything, and she's the type to have said something. This question makes me wonder how different people might have been over 100 years ago, when you live in a one-room cabin and have 6 kids. How did they make more kids? I heard my mom talk about how they have to be quiet about having sex in my grandma's house cause the walls are thin. My parents are a little older, so this is my 56-year-old mother talking about having loud sex with my 61-year-old father. Not a parent but a kid. I would normally stay up late watching YouTube on my phone and I can see the door to my parents' room from mine and I saw my mom close the door. She doesn't normally do that. Then a minute later I just start hearing squeaking from their bed and I just laid there for what felt like hours trying to go to sleep. Repainting kids' bathroom. So children had to shower in our ensuite. Didn't realize it, but the walls are quite thin. So I was talking to my wife about going down on her when I heard my teenager shout EWWW from the bathroom. A little mortifying, but at the same time, I kind of want my kids to know I'm still into their mom. I have a great story for this which will never see the light of day. Not a parent, but once when I was in my older brother's room looking for comics when he came home with his girlfriend and I panicked and closed the closet door. He went through the house and loudly inquired about my presence, to which I stayed mum. I wasn't trying to catch a beating. Well, through the closet door I was treated to the loudest, sloppiest blowjob I've ever heard since. I literally clasped my hands over my mouth to stifle breathing. Thank God he didn't want to change his shirt. They soon left for her house and I was left clutching a crumpled Superman comic, shocked and intrigued by the entire experience. I later confessed to my accidental tourism later that night and he just laughed. Couple years ago, I was going to visit my BF, so I woke up really early to get the bus. The house was eerily quiet and I saw the lights were on and the door was open in my parents' room, so I went in to turn the lights off. It was bright outside. When I crawled over their bed to reach the other lamp, I saw a box on the floor with a dildo, condoms, porn DVDs and probably other it I don't remember, so I immediately freaked and went to the sitting room to see what was going on and why weren't my parents asleep in their bed. Huge mistake. They were butt naked doing the deed on the couch, but they didn't spot me. I decided to make as much noise as possible so they knew I was awake, and a little while later my mom walked into the kitchen acting surprised I was up so early. Needless to say, I got out of there ASAP. Later that day when I got home I told them what I saw and all my dad did was laugh. As I'm traumatized. I tripped over my cat once. Called him a D-head. My 3-year-old daughter decided that was his new name and told everyone daddy calls the cat D-head. Grandparents, nursery staff and anyone who asked about her pet cat. It's weird how many of these stories involve basements. I'm gonna need me some of that D later slaps husband's butt. OMG mom. Seriously? I came home from school when I was very little and my dad was doing things to my mom in the kitchen like all folks do. And I asked what they were doing, very awkward for them. But I was just little. Later that week we had a huge family gathering and I remember telling a bunch of people that I saw my dad putting his fingers in my mom's butthole like to my aunts and uncles and grandparents. Definitely an interesting Christmas party for sure. It's all past us now and honestly no one talks about it. So I think it's all good. I'll answer for my mom because I don't think she reddits. Hi mom. If I was wrong. When I was around 5 my dad took up a mistress and abandoned the family after she decided my dad should only have kids with her. So my dad had the bright idea to call my mom, and after going on a tirade about how she should have aborted me, I was a planned and wanted conception. He wanted me then, and how he'd sell me for a car if she didn't give him the family car. She wound up having to let my dad come back after he had a car wreck and the mistress cleared his bank account and left him in the IQ. That man stole my mother's wedding ring, a gold bracelet that my late gran left me, and a pink sapphire ring that mom bought me as my first piece of real jewelry, and he still got to die in my mother's house after years of abusing both of us. Man, reading all this makes me real thankful of my relationship with my parents. When I was a kid, my mom once tried to duck with me by telling me I was adopted. I just said something along the lines of makes sense. Like y'all two could have made someone as great as me. It's, to this day, still a running joke in our family. Not a parent but a kid. We were on a trip and we rented a 4-bedroom house. One for me, one for my brother and his GF, one for my parents and one for the sister of my brother's GF. I was only 13-14 and I could hear my parents going at it hard, so I went downstairs to just play something with my headphones on. The headphones were wireless. At some point I went to the fridge to get some water and I see my brother's GF naked looking for ice cubes. Didn't notice her prior to that cause I didn't hear anything due to headphones. She just ran upstairs and left the freezer open. I was just meh. Okay, I will have to stay one more hour downstairs. Next day on the beach, I was just trying to rest my eyes and heard my mom say, I wonder what this boy is doing all night staying awake. Well, I can't sleep because of the ducking noises in the house. My mom talked about using anal beads while we were at a McDonald's. Apparently she forgot that I was there. It was the most awkward dinner that I ever had.